Capital Elite Circle is abuzz with news that the prodigal son is after me. I coldly refused. I'm your third brother's man. You go ask his opinion first? The prodigal son was so scared that he couldn't stand up when he saw the man behind me. The cool and indifferent man asked me. My man? On the drive from Lake Manasarovar to Mount Namcha Barwa. I briefly went on air. Soon after, topics related to me hit the hot list. Sterling family's heir apparent Ethan Sterling. For half an hour. Swiped 5 million on travel blogger Emily Winter's live stream. The studio's assistant called me with kind words. Twiggy. If you really can't, go have dinner with him. Let's have dinner with him. After all, it's the Sterling family. On a smaller scale, this is Ethan Sterling. To put it in a larger sense, behind him is the Sterling family. The Sterling family. 100 years of business. A strong background. In the prosperous city of Northern Capital. Is the existence of the unattainable. I frowned as I stared at the two phrases that were rising in heat. Hashtag Sterling family heir apparent travel blogger Emily Winters hashtag. Hashtag Ethan Sterling swiping 5 million in half an hour hashtag. These two topics, for no reason at all, made me snort with laughter. Sterling family heir apparent. Ethan Sterling doesn't count. But it's the adjective heir apparent that makes a person pop into my head. The one who, in the freezing cold, poured a glass of wine on the ground, hung his head, and made a devotional wish. My webcam captured this moment. And later this travel diary became a big hit. A few days later, my assistant told me with trepidation that the man in the video was the best of the younger generation of the Sterling family. I knew it. I knew it from the beginning. Jonathan Sterling. The heir apparent of the Capital Elite Circle. Not just in the Sterling family. He was also, in all but name, my husband. 3 days later, I returned to Beijing. The snow in the capital is so different from the snow in the Himalayan region that I'm not used to it. I waited for Ethan Sterling on the promenade outside the private lounge. But the appointed time had already passed. Ethan Sterling arrived with his arm around a beautiful woman. He reeked of alcohol. And there was a sneer in his eyes when he saw me. I thought you were so noble that you could sleep for $5 million? People with a high status always have a little bit of heart in them. Ethan Sterling has always been held in high regard. And he was naturally upset that I rejected him for over a month. In fact, in their circle, most of them are low-key. Not many are as flamboyant as Ethan Sterling. He is very difficult to deal with. If I don't come, he will sooner or later make the people around me have no peace. Ethan Sterling leans toward me. The smell of alcohol enveloping him. I took 2 steps back and spoke slowly. Ethan Sterling. I slept with your third brother. At his words, Ethan Sterling's body shook. A natural reaction of fear. He withdrew his outstretched hand. What did you say? I slept with your third brother. Did you have to go after me to get your third brother's opinion? I took out a cigarette and held it in my mouth, flipping the lighter with my fingertips to suppress my inner agitation. In their circle, changing women is too normal. In my current situation, saying it was Jonathan Sterling's wife wasn't believable. Speaking out about this secret union will only add to the trouble. Besides, the marriage license is with Jonathan Sterling. Ethan Sterling stared at me, and then violently tensed his body, his tone trembling slightly. Third brother. What brings you here? Ethan Sterling wasn't lying. Behind me, the sound of heels clattering against the floor comes from far to near. A moment later, a bony hand circled my wrist. I raise my eyes and my gaze collides with Jonathan Sterling. Coldness traveled from my tailbone to my canopy. And I panicked a little. He bowed his head slightly and his crisp voice came out. Lend me a light. His fingertips pressed against my violently beating pulse. The cigarette between Jonathan Sterling's lips lit. And several in the room stood up straight. Third brother. What brings you back from the Himalayan region so suddenly? Jonathan Sterling's tiger's mouth clasped my wrist. The temperature was transmitted to each other. But the words were cold. I want to see you back in the office in 20 minutes. Third brother. I'm outta here. The person who was still arrogant in front of my eyes just now ran away with a panicked face, dragging the female companion beside him. Jonathan Sterling and I were the only ones left in the quiet corridor. This quiet atmosphere was like a declaration of my progress of death. Cold? He let go of my hand and looked at me sullenly. It's not cold. Is it? What's shaking? I was dumbfounded. It was natural that I couldn't do anything to calm down when my lie was exposed by the person in question. He held his cigarette and flicked the ash away from me. Emily Winters. I shuddered again. Huh? When did we sleep together? And? What? Jonathan Sterling paused. An idle laugh coming from him. Get a grip. The heartbeat's too loud. Jonathan Sterling put me in the presidential suite on the highest floor. He had a dinner meeting and asked me to wait here for a while. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking northern capital city at night. The snow and lights were intertwined, bustling to the point of disorientation. Once upon a time, I stood high up on a hill countless times, looking down at the traffic coming from the north and the south. Then once I fell. Anyone could come and step on it. At the worst time, Jonathan Sterling half-squatted in front of me and carefully asked me, Emily Winters, do you want to marry me? Branch. I can protect you. After the memories, some pain weighs me down. And I find the waiter and ask him to lead me to the top floor to see what's going on. It was raining and snowing and very windy. The high fence obstructed the view of the camera. So I found a table and climbed up. I was so engrossed in the view as it opened up that I didn't even feel the rain and snow falling on me. There was a loud pushing sound and I realized, as an afterthought, that I was only a few steps away from falling. Jonathan Sterling's narrow, sharp eyes. The coldness of the past is no longer. He rose red. Branch. Come down. He was scared. But what was he afraid of? Why is this exactly like when I lost the most important thing to me? Growing up in a family of deceit. Jonathan Sterling was hopelessly thin-skinned. At least I've never seen him like this. His hands were shaking as he reached out to me. His voice begging. Ebony. Come down. Please. I jumped under the table. And the next second I was encircled by a wide embrace. How dare you? How dare you? He repeated those 4 words over and over again. His harsh words froze. Jonathan Sterling's body is also trembling. Fell on my waist limbs of the hand while I circle very tight. He seemed to be in love with me to the bone at the moment. But in fact, our relationship is so ordinary that we are like strangers. Even after the legal union certification, we have not seriously seen a few times. I subconsciously wrapped my arms around him and comforted him. I'm fine. I just want to shoot some video footage. Emily Winters. Jonathan Sterling slowed down. And his heaviest words were just these 2. He pulls me down the stairs and wipes me down gently. A few floors below, there were a lot of people, probing and looking our way. There are a few familiar faces that I subconsciously avoid. Jonathan Sterling gritted his teeth. Mrs. Sterling. Can't I get on? When we got into the elevator, I answered back. Jonathan Sterling. It's not necessary. What's unnecessary? He sneered. No need to show up? Or not necessary to keep my wife from jumping out of a building? He's taken me on this journey. And I'm sure he'll be the reason I'm getting a little bit of face time in the business world and in the hustle and bustle. But it wasn't necessary. Jonathan Sterling. The contractual arrangement says that in a week's time, we should get a divorce. Jonathan Sterling. One fall from the clouds is enough. My first encounter with Jonathan Sterling was at the Winchester's exclusive ski resort. My dad had agreed to accompany me, but he still brought his business to private occasions. Jonathan Sterling stood beside my dad with his eyes narrowed, chatting about cooperation. At the end of the day, my dad pointed to me with a half-smile and said, "This is my daughter. If she didn't fall this time, I'll sign the contract for you." Senior Road. I am not very sure. When I fell once, I lay in the hospital for half a month, grimacing. The friends around me laughed. It's over. Gigi. You have to offend people. In the cold wind, Jonathan Sterling and I stared at each other. I had heard of his reputation. I marveled at the fact that a man with a heart of gold had been born with extremely beautiful eyes. I asked him, "Mr. Chung, do you trust me?" The person in front of me nodded slightly. "I believe you." Later on, I skated the advanced course many times until my enthusiasm wore off. And none of them went as well as this one. My dad, feigning anger, described me as an arm twister. Jonathan Sterling, his eyes half-lidded and a smile on his lips, took the blame back on him. My father's four-letter word. "I'm the one who's lucky." It was an understatement that made me think of him whenever I heard the word fate mentioned as I traveled around. I think of the man who once encapsulated my youthful arrogance into his glory. It was my fate to meet Emily Winters. Perhaps it was because he had been favored by the Winters family that he was willing to lend me a helping hand when the Winters family fell. The termination of the marriage contractual arrangement was 2 years. Jonathan Sterling didn't look happy when I mentioned it. However, he sat in his car as he walked away, his jawline taut. He inclined his head and asked me through the window, "Emily Winters, don't you have a heart?" It was the same beautiful, full eyes, piled high with despondency. Accused for no reason. I lower my head and don't say anything as the car heads off. It's raining harder and harder in Northern Capital City tonight. On the taxi app, I was ranked hundreds of places back. As I wait for the car, the sound of laughter comes from behind me. I stiffened. And before I turned around, I heard someone wonder, "Qingji, look at that back. Does it look like Emily Winters?" A moment later, a hoarse voice answered, "It's her." The nervousness quickly dissipated as Jonathan Sterling returned, holding an umbrella. He came over and gently tugged me under it. "Sorry. Shouldn't have gotten upset with you." In less than 10 minutes, he coaxed himself back together. Lucas Grant called from behind me. "Branch." Jonathan Sterling pressed down the umbrella, blocking out the heat from behind him, and asked me, "Do you want to go say hi to him?" "No need." His fingertips were cool, running across my palm, and he held me with his fingers interlocked. "Let's go." The moment I got into the car, I heard Lucas Grant's irritated voice behind me. "Gigi, you're not allowed to get into the car." Suddenly I remembered that Lucas Grant was just as furious when we were separated after the Wynn family's accident. He said, "Etsy, I really like you. But you can't expect me to do anything for you. Lover and wife. Just a name. You care that much? Those who are deeply in love will never be able to return. And those who are thinly in love will play the game. I certainly don't expect anyone to lose their mind for my sake." It rained for several nights. My assistant called me, saying that the Tourism Bureau of Himalayan region invited me to co-create a promotional video. "Fix the time first. I'll be there soon." "Eboshi, have you taken care of everything with Northern Capital?" I nodded my head, and my eyes inadvertently saw the photo in Jonathan Sterling's study through the gap. On a red background, he in a suit and me in a veil. The only thing was ceremony in a sham marriage. Jonathan Sterling had enlarged the photo and framed it in his study. My assistant called my name and I snapped out of my daze. "I'll deal with it soon. And I'll never go back to Northern Capital again." In the middle of the night, I was distracted by the photo. When I went to the living room to look for a drink, I saw Jonathan Sterling. The lights weren't on. And in the dimness, the lighted cigarette flickered on and off. I sat down next to him and took one of his cigarettes. "Lighter?" "It's a very strong cigarette." His collar was unbuttoned, revealing a particularly nice collarbone. Jonathan Sterling didn't give me a lighter and gave a little laugh at my naked stare. "What are you looking at?" I didn't hide it. "Nice-looking torso." He paused and laughed harder, his chest shaking slightly. "You're honest. There are more honest ones." "Like what?" "I want to touch." The atmosphere was quiet for a moment, and I shrugged, biting into my cigarette and smiling down. "A lighter." The next moment, a strong arm wrapped around my waist and Jonathan Sterling held me in his lap. He pinched my chin. 2 cigarettes facing each other. He looked serious enough. Like he was kissing a lover. And then he bit the cigarette between his lips and spoke to me. Touch it. Overplayed. I had a moment of embarrassment and a joyful reaction. Jonathan Sterling laughed even harder as he asked a searing question in the rambling blackness of the night. Ebony. Can you really not see that I like you? I've always thought of Jonathan Sterling as a sober, calm, unassuming man. Tonight. He was withdrawn. Restrained. And out of control in front of me. The cigarette is stubbed out and the ambiguity tumbles upward in a desperate way. His tiger's mouth tackles my waist. His other hand against the back of my neck. His fingers caressing back and forth. Jonathan Sterling couldn't care less about the answer to the question. He drops his head closer to me in my desire to speak. Kisses were about to fall. And warm lips leaned against the crook of my ear. No one had been drinking. And no one seemed to be inebriated. I even forget to resist. Listening to his low voice. Back and forth intimately called me wife. 2 confused people. So confused that they tried to sink together. In the end I came to my senses. Pushed him away and said, Jonathan Sterling. Don't go on. In the world of fame and fortune, power comes and goes. And marriage is something that has long been marked up. If you put me in a window, I'm just a piece of junk. This marriage doesn't count. And the Sterling family won't really let him marry me in the end. There was no need to try anything that didn't work out. Once my refusal became apparent, the intimacy was over. He let go and reminded me in a husky voice. Go to bed early. It was a cold and windy night. Jonathan Sterling went back and forth into the bathroom a few times and came out with a chill. I leaned against the window and looked out at the world blurred by heavy rain. Once the clock strikes 12 tomorrow night, the contractual arrangement will be terminated. And I will be a stranger. I turned over to find the camera and lifted up the corner of my coat. With a click, I recorded a photo. In the photo, the finger marks on my waist are obvious. This is the only intimacy between us that will dissipate. The rain was really endless. I didn't sleep well and woke up repeatedly. When I woke up again and took out my cell phone, there were many messages from my assistant. Branch. You're on the hot search again. In the screenshot she sent me, the topic made me cringe for a moment. Hashtag Emily Winters ex-boyfriend fatalism. The accompanying image was a photo. I'm being held by a man with an umbrella favoring my side. The person beside me, hidden behind the umbrella, only managed to see his chin. His posture erect. His suit pants mostly wet. With a cool white filter. The atmosphere is drawn out and the netizens are stoned. They have always been a very mysterious existence. One's unrecorded past can also be dug out. Emily Winters is someone who really has a background. Northern capital inches of land. With playgrounds and ski slopes open only to her alone. On New Year's Eve 2 years ago, fireworks were set off all night. And it was said that some big shot was there to cheer her up. I have seen her in Himalayan region. Followed by a private rescue team of 2 cars. And some places that are expressly forbidden to be open to the public. She went in with a phone call. A few days ago Sterling family male son of that thing. The person behind her. Send people abroad to eat dirt to go. The following gossip people asked in unison. Hooah hooah hooah. Lucas Grant of the Gu family. A little later. Before my statement was posted. The topic could not be searched. And the related discussion could not be read in full. Maybe it was Jonathan Sterling. Other than the occasional display of indulgence toward me. He really isn't a soft touch. At least in the case of Ethan Sterling. Jonathan Sterling handled the situation with indifference. Who would have thought that a few days ago the star-struck son of a gun would be cut off from all financial resources and thrown into a foreign retreat? Besides, no one wants to be a stand-in. Expired candy that's been driven crazy by the internet. All these ridiculous-sounding things. And the man behind the umbrella. It was always Jonathan Sterling. Not Lucas Grant. After 2 days, the sky finally cleared. The divorce contractual arrangement was written and placed in Jonathan Sterling's study. I booked a return ticket and made a farewell call to Jonathan Sterling. He was busy and his secretary answered the phone, saying he was in a meeting. I hung up the phone and packed my few bags. When I left the house, I saw people I didn't really want to see. Lucas Grant was leaning against his Maybach. Cigarette butts all around his feet. He looked like he had been waiting for me for a long time. His appearance was a bit disheveled, and the red blood lines under his eyes were obvious. I had a moment of trance. Young and passionate like. But also came to this point. Lucas Grant saw my luggage. Eyes lit up for a moment. "I'll give you a ride." After a long stalemate, I was the one who compromised. The music playing in the car was my favorite music, and Lucas Grant's voice mixed with the music into my ears. "Etsy. Turn around and follow me. Okay?" He wore a wedding ring on his ring finger, and he didn't feel the slightest bit bad about what he said. Not 3 months after the Wen family's downfall, he turned his head and got engaged to the right young lady. I was at his villa at the time. He came from the engagement party. His suit was stained with the smell of alcohol. "We branch good some. I support you for life." I mentioned separation. "He can smash everything in the villa. Trophy companion not happy to be? Must you pretend to be some free bird?" He knew what I wanted and still wanted to trap me. It's the same today. We're not on the same page, so we don't have to give it away. Lucas Grant let me out of the car, but he was so tense, so determined to make sure I gave him a satisfactory answer, that Jonathan Sterling's phone rang just in time. "Are you in the car?" The car sped up and I panicked a little. "Jonathan Sterling. Hold on to your seatbelt." A few minutes later, a Cullinan reversed direction and jackknifed the Maybach. The phone is still ringing, and Jonathan Sterling and I are staring at each other through the glass of the car. On the other end of the line, a warm voice laced with light laughter. "Ebony. Ex-boyfriend or ex-husband? Choose one." "Jonathan Sterling. I'm coming with you." Winter 2015. Northern Capital Time. 10:39. The short stretch of road to the airport was blocked off for the better part of an hour. The story was not broadcast by any of the news outlets. Lucas Grant's wife came to pick him up and held his gaze for a long time when she saw me. Her reasoning was to treat it as a misunderstanding and forget about compensation. But she wanted to have a word with me. I was tucked into the car by Jonathan Sterling and watched them talk through the glass. With the window down a bit, I heard Jonathan Sterling let out a sneer. His tone was extremely indifferent. "Pick up someone in front of my house. This matter. How can it be easily forgotten? Mrs. Gus' body shook. And when she looked at me again, she was filled with disbelief. She probably couldn't figure out how Jonathan Sterling, who had always given people the benefit of the doubt in the business world, could be so determined for me. Sometimes, even I can't understand. How many layers of masks does a person who is comfortable in everything wear in relationships? How many words of truth? How much love? How much liking? Mrs. Gu bowed her head and apologized. Lucas Grant hung his head and didn't say a word. Jonathan Sterling returned to his car and drove me to the airport. He didn't say a word to me while I was waiting for my flight. In a few short days, I became more like the person I was least likely to leave. As I was leaving, I turned and hugged him. Jonathan Sterling stiffened for a moment and bent to take me into his arms. "Something to say?" I moved my lips, my eyes aching. "Thank you for taking care of me these past 2 years. I am very honored to have been Mrs. Sterling for 2 years. The apparent calm has since ripped away." Jonathan Sterling pressed me against the door of the VIP room. He kissed me passionately and fiercely. "Gigi. Be safe for the rest of your life." I flew directly from the capital airport to Gonga and then transferred to Linji. When we arrived at our destination, the rescue team member who had been following me for years turned his head to make a phone call as soon as he saw me. He veered over and put it on speakerphone. Very deliberately. "Jean Zhou. She's here." The signal wasn't very good. It lagged a bit, and the current jabbed and rattled, before finally going quiet. The person on the other end of the line was calm. "It's been like this for the past 2 years. I've been calling Jonathan Sterling once in a while to check in. The rescue team members had arranged to come and were different. He'd check in every now and then. But he didn't talk about me very often. And when he did, it was mostly in a flirtatious way. Like right now. The caller took a sip of his drink and raised the end of his eyebrow. She says she misses you. Heh heh. Rumor-mongering dog. I slowed down on my feet uncontrollably, listening for the man to move. A few seconds pass and a low chuckle comes over the phone from Jonathan Sterling. Don't make fun of her. The laugh is deep. As if it's pleasurable whether it's true or not. The man in front of me finished his glass in one gulp. A bit of a bitchy look. He looked at me with exaggeratedly wide eyes. Hey, Twiggy. Why are you eavesdropping? I'm not talking about you. Oh. You're not thinking about Jonathan Sterling. After saying that, he turned his head and said to Jonathan Sterling. Hey. Who put it on speakerphone? It was all heard. I'm sick. I need to be cured. I walked towards the room. The phone behind me was still on the hook. The moment I was about to close the door, I heard the drunken man raise his voice. I'm going back to Lhasa next. Your tail will not be able to hide. The road was bumpy. I touched the bed to sleep. Did not look deeply into the meaning of these two words. During the night, I dreamed back and forth about Jonathan Sterling holding me against the door in the waiting room. Mask and disguise shredded. He kissed me as he murmured. Ebony. Can I keep you? In February of 16. I returned to Lhasa from Mount Namcha Barwa. On the way, the Gu family stopped us. Lucas Grant's wife chased me to Tibet and insisted on seeing me. She was suffering from severe high-altitude sickness and was half lying on the bed on oxygen. The first thing she said when she saw me was, Emily Winters. Do you want to help Qingji? I sat in front of her and looked at her with detachment. Now look. She really put Lucas Grant in her heart. In a business marriage, whoever gives their heart has to suffer a lot. At one time, Lucas Grant and I had a mutual friend who came as a lobbyist. He seemed to reveal that after we separated, Lucas Grant had been with a few people who always had a bit of me in them. This kind of marriage. No one is serious. No one will give their heart. Why do you care so much? That's what they always asked. I cared. So I left. After all, not everyone can be a third party for the sake of money. The person in front of me struggled to sit up. And I remained motionless. She was also the lobbyist, begging me to Jonathan Sterling to say a few words for the Gu family. Jonathan Sterling's intentional targeting pressed the Gu family. You grew up together. You can't see him end up as down and out as you. Past grudges. She does not ask. So she does not know. And Lucas Grant after the separation. He in order to force me to turn back. Isolate all attempts to help me a hand. Even the work will not let me smooth. Now. I'm the straw that could save him from his predicament. I shook my head. Refusing. Jonathan Sterling won't change his decision-making because of a word or two from me. He will. She was so sure. She pushed her cell phone in front of me. You can try. She was so sure that I hesitated. As if a word or two from me could really stabilize a feeding wolf. Finally, I got up and smiled. I can't help you. I can't help. I am, these days, partial to Jonathan Sterling. The first stop on the way to Lhasa. To Drakyurpa Monastery. Passing through Nagarjuna Pass. My assistant called me excitedly. Look. Etsy. The hills here are covered with prayer flags. One on top of the other. I photographed Jonathan Sterling here. And because of him. The fire. In a sacred place. Hang up the prayer flags for blessings. There will be a soft-hearted God who will let you fulfill your wishes. One by one. The group got off the bus. And someone went to buy a sutra. I guess it was someone I knew. I heard a few rescue team members talking to the owner in Tibetan. After a long time, the owner, in broken Mandarin, called out to me. Mrs. Sterling. The rescue team members let out pure laughter. My cheeks flushed and I told them to keep their mouths shut. The owner said he was the one who recognized me. Because of my video? He shook his head. Because of Jonathan Sterling. I was stunned. Huh? The rescue team tugged my assistant to hang a sutra. My boss was as surprised as I was. You didn't know? Know what? He called for someone to watch the store and led me outside, pointing out a general area in the sea of streamers. There. They're all there. Jonathan Sterling's. A big one. Many of them. 200 meters of streamers. He was full of praise. He said Jonathan Sterling had been here many times, hung many streamers, and spread wind horses countless times. Without the help of others. He conquered the power of the wind all by himself. The 200 meters of streamers are for the blessing of one person only. He has written your name many times on the streamers. I asked him who it was. The owner turned his head to look at me. His face slightly red with a simple smile. I stood still. My fingers subconsciously curling up. The owner's Mandarin had a slight Tibetan accent. He rubbed his nose down and smiled. Paraphrasing Jonathan Sterling's words to me. He said, "This is my lover. Emily Winters. This is my love. Emily Winters. If one day she turns around and walks by and you happen to meet her, please tell her for me. I'm always behind her." He came here over and over again to pray. That's why that meeting with Ethan Sterling. He asked. Third brother. What brings you back from the Himalayan region? Everything had a beginning. But I couldn't see it. In 16. My career was going strangely well. I collaborated with a TV station on a cultural documentary. After it became a big hit, resources came pouring in one after another. I couldn't feel the passage of time as I was enjoying the career I loved so much. When I was free, it was the end of another year. I received New Year's wishes from many people one after another. And the chat box with Jonathan Sterling was pressed to the bottom. Throughout the year, I occasionally heard from him. The Sterling family, in his hands, turned upward to a higher level. Half a month ago, Sterling family arranged his engagement. And within 2 days, he backed out forcefully. It wasn't the talk of the town. It was one day when I flipped to Ethan Sterling in a private message in the background. He was furious and used multiple exclamation points. Foxy. I was a little amused and sent him a question mark back. He poured this out in a torrent and called me out again. Vixen. I was kinda wronged. But I was too busy at the time and didn't ask. Now that I was free, I began to wonder if I should give Jonathan Sterling a call. I tentatively sent him a Happy New Year. The clock struck 12. And after 2 hours, he still hadn't returned. I tossed my cell phone aside and set about writing my book. It was the latter part of the night by the time I shut down my computer. And I couldn't brew up any sleep until the phone rang. I picked it up and the sound of the wind whistling came from the other end. Happy New Year. Ebony. I had a momentary flutter. Happy New Year. Jonathan Sterling. The sound of rain came from the other end of the line. I flipped through my cell phone and the weather forecast showed that it wasn't going to rain in Northern Capital. Almost subconsciously, I ran toward the window, curtains drawn back, and glanced down. A car is parked on the side of the road with double blinkers on. Jonathan Sterling was holding an umbrella and looked up at me. The distance is too great for me to see what he looks like at the moment. There was a smile on the phone as he asked me in a warm voice. Branch. Are you happy to see me? At this moment. Heavy rain. Cold wind. There is a place in my heart. Because of Jonathan Sterling. There is a warming phenomenon. Happy. Very happy. In 2017. I ran halfway across the map. My career stabilized. I stopped moving around from south to north. And began to consciously find a suitable place to stop. About Jonathan Sterling. With his permission, I wrote about him in my book, expressing my gratitude in 1 page of words. In 2018, Jonathan Sterling took control of the Sterling family in real power. Unmarried. In the second half of the year, he once again traveled a long way to see me. The air of reserve on his body was a little heavier. And he was still eye-catching and good-looking. This time, he asked me, "Do you want to go back to Northern Capital?" I pursed my lips, tilted my head to look at him and asked, Do you want to get married? Thin-skinned people play the world. Deep-skinned people get what they want. Extra. Jonathan Sterling first met Emily Winters in 2011. She encountered a dog abuser in an alley, swung a stick and fought with him. She came out with the dying dog in her arms, her dress stained with blood. Jonathan Sterling was eating at a nearby restaurant when the person next to him mentioned it to him. Said that the Wen family's eldest young lady was fighting with someone outside. His eyebrows jumped and he rushed outside. A few steps behind Lucas Grant. Lucas Grant pulled her arm with a condemning face. Miss Wynne, your life isn't worth much, is it? Emily Winters had a wound on her face and couldn't care less about herself. Rushing to get to the vet hospital. Jonathan Sterling was not far from them and listened to Emily Winters' indignation. Next time I see him, I'll kill him. Who are you gonna kill with your little arms and legs? Lucas Grant. Oh. Come on. Granddaddy. I'll get you to the hospital right away. Jonathan Sterling was holding a cigarette, looking at Emily Winters through the smoke. And she had a bright smile on her face. He hadn't realized it at this point. The one who was always late to the party was always the second man. When he met Emily Winters again, it was at a business dinner organized by the Winters family. He was on the second-floor balcony looking down. Emily Winters was dressed in a modest evening gown, accompanied by her father. It hadn't been a good time for him. The Sterling family was so intertwined that everyone was fighting to the death, both openly and secretly. He wasn't a very powerful man, and he was physically and mentally exhausted from all the deceit. At that time, the friend beside him followed his gaze downward and shook his head. Jean Jo. Don't move your mind that shouldn't be moved. Jonathan Sterling did not say anything. His friend was still trying to persuade him. In this circle, it's all about the right family. Even if Mr. Wynne chooses the Sterling family in the end, it won't be the unassuming you in the Sterling family. My friend is still chattering. He said that Emily Winters is a person who won't turn around to pick up 1,000,000 pearl earrings after dropping them. How many times do you long for someone like her to turn around for someone like you? Jonathan Sterling didn't have that deep a heart for Emily Winters at the time, but he took that in. The third time we met, it was a year apart. This time Jonathan Sterling sort of broke out of the mire. Sharp as a tack, he talked business with the Wynne family. And Mr. Wynne made an appointment at the exclusive SKI resort. This business in the end, no matter how to talk about it. But Mr. Wynne intentionally flirted with Emily Winters, letting her skate on a high-level course. Emily Winters skied beautifully. Afterward, he went to thank her with a gift, and the girl politely declined. She tugged on her scarf, revealing her pretty face. No need. I'm afraid my boyfriend will be jealous. Jonathan Sterling had put a lot of thought into the gift, but in the end he just put it back together. Then he watched Emily Winters turn and bounce off to Lucas Grant. Jonathan Sterling wondered if, in the story, there was ever a play for the later? In 2013, something happened to the Winters family. He rushed back from abroad and couldn't find Emily Winters. People around him told him that Lucas Grant was protecting her. But within 2 to 3 months, it was all the talk in the community that Lucas Grant was engaged to the daughter of the G family. Then he married Emily Winters. 2 years. Emily Winters thought of this contractual arrangement marriage. He is repaying the favor of the Winters family. But in fact, there was a little heart in it that he could not say. As well, it was as bright a time as he could currently afford to give Emily Winters against the pressure of the Sterling family. Not with him. Not as his caged pet with status. Mrs. Sterling. Someone who wants to trap her in a cage and be a handful. Jonathan Sterling favors Emily Winters, rocking the boat for 90,000 miles. After the wedding, Emily Winters' mood was off. She was always moping. Jonathan Sterling always rushes home immediately after he is busy. He was in the search engine. The most common search question: how to make his wife happy. There were thousands of ways, but none of them worked. So he asked, "Do you want to go for a walk?" Emily Winters' eyes became more vivid. Can I? Yes. It's good to have fun. So she left Northern Capital to see the mountains and the sea. Calling Jonathan Sterling to check in. She smiles every now and then. Later, she made videos to document the event, which was uneventful. Jonathan Sterling got his own professionals to form a private group rescue team to follow Emily Winters. If you're on a road trip one day, you see a black SUV followed by a fleet of 2 private rescue vehicles. That's Jonathan Sterling, protecting his wife. In 2014, Emily Winters was in a much better place emotionally. But it was Jonathan Sterling who had a problem. He doesn't know when he became so obsessed with Emily Winters. When he can't see Emily Winters, he occasionally has heart palpitations and trembles. The doctor prescribed him medication, saying it was an emotional withdrawal reaction. He froze, propped up his forehead and smiled helplessly. In February, he went to Tibet. In the Nijin mountain hanging streamers sprinkle wind horses. Devout wishing. A cup of wine was poured out, begging with the gods in all directions. To the heaven and earth. To the mountains and waters. To the wind and snow. Wish Emily Winters peace on her long journey. Unbeknownst to Jonathan Sterling, Emily Winters was in a corner, filming this moment. And it caught fire. He went to see his aunt in a nursing home. She wears pearl earrings, given to her by the man she was forced to separate from. Those of them who enjoy the wealth and power of their families also suffer accordingly. Jonathan Sterling sits with his aunt and watches a video made by Emily Winters. The aunt asks, "Jean Jo, isn't that you?" He nods his head. "Do you want someone to take care of this video?" Jonathan Sterling put away his cell phone and took his aunt's arm. "No need. Auntie. This is my wife's video." This was one of the rare occasions when he was able to share the joy of his marriage with someone close to him. The aunt froze for a long time, hugged him, and choked back tears, saying, "That's nice." In 2015, Emily Winters returned to Northern Capital and signed a contractual arrangement for divorce. Jonathan Sterling couldn't keep her. And he knew that what Emily Winters wanted now wasn't a child's love. The best antidote to his withdrawal reaction was to leave for good. In 2016, Emily Winters got even hotter. Her career was in good hands. Jonathan Sterling was able to see a documentary about her on TV. They, however, were not in constant contact. In 2017, Emily Winters wrote about him in her book, a page full of gratitude. Jonathan Sterling thought that if he were to describe Emily Winters, 7 words would suffice. This is the love of my life. Emily Winters. In 2018, Emily Winters made a name for herself. And by her own efforts, she made a name for herself. That same year, he solidified the Sterling family and became the man in charge. At the best of both worlds, he went to Emily Winters. He asked, "Do you want to go back to Northern Capital?" Emily Winters smiled and said, "Want to get married?" The dark side of the world. Jonathan Sterling encountered the hijacking. And finally solved. In 2019, he gave Emily Winters an unforgettable wedding. In 2020, Emily Winters gave birth to a little princess. In 2021, the child grabbed his pants leg and babbled, calling Jonathan Sterling Daddy. In 2023, the family is traveling. Jonathan Sterling, as he had hoped,